Were there things that you were apprehensive about that were different between the two, or at all, or did you just feel I'm prepared and confident?
I know we were apprehensive about having to go to the hospital. I think having done all the preparation for doing an out-of-hospital birth, I know that was a big fear. We were just hoping that there weren't any complications that would require us to have to go to the hospital.
And I think that was why we really wanted a very confident midwife. And an older, like Amy Johnson Grass isn't incredibly older, but that woman, I feel like she really knew what she was doing. She really knew. That gave me some confidence. And then she said, yep, no matter what I do, there's going to be a small percentage that will be hospital transfers. Mm-hmm. So, yep. But I felt like she had been around the block, and that expertise really made me feel like, her confidence gave me confidence. But yeah, I was worried about that experience sort of being stolen for some reason or another, that something out of my control.
Yeah.
Or going to the hospital, and then all those people that were like, don't you, you're going to end up in the hospital. You know?
Yeah. You tried to have your kid at home and ended up at the hospital.
No, and really, especially too, they say a lot of maternal, like what was your mother's process like, can sometimes, lend itself to how it will go for you. Mm-hmm. So my sister was actually a Franklin breech. So that, they just were like, well, just be watchful in case, for positioning for the baby. And
yeah. Yeah, and I would say for me, it was probably the normal apprehensions that any parent would have, just that the baby's going to be okay and that there's not, any complications in general, whether we end up at the hospital or not. You just want the baby to be healthy, and I want you to be healthy. So, but nothing. I don't think anything real specific that I was really worried about. It was more,
I feel like we knew everything that we could possibly know.
Yeah.
We really read. I read, and I was constantly telling you, and you were constantly like, "Wow, she's probably so sick of hearing about this."
and I think the well checks that we did, especially the frequency,
the prenatal ones.
I'm sorry, the prenatal checks, especially they pick up in frequency as you get closer. Really helps put your mind at ease, because she basically says, like, where the baby is now, that's where they're probably going to be. They're not more than likely going to be moving around.
Well, and those visits were so, like, it almost felt like we were hanging out with family by the time it was over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
So that part was. But don't you think with the second one we were worried about how Ruby would do? I think that was an apprehension I had as well.
Yeah, I think going from one kid to two, it was maybe more so how are we going to do two kids?
So it wasn't about the birth, actually our midwife team prepared us for that as well. They're like, now you have a baby. Do you want your daughter to be there with you? Do you not? Mm-hmm. What's your plans for how long is she going to be gone? If she is gone, who's going to take her? So they were literally helping us think every single thing through.
Okay.
Yep.
And what do you think helped you the most with either of the births?
I think having a doula was very helpful at the actual birth.
I think that it was just women, being surrounded by women, and having a very supportive partner. I couldn't have done it first without Paul being like trusting that I knew what I was doing, and making good decisions. Because it would have been hard had we not had the same value system.
I think if we would have disagreed, it would have been that would have been
really hard.
Tough.
But then following that, having a tribe of women that were like, your body knows what to do. We are going to just help your body know what to do. And that they were so confident. And then it was this community of strength and womanhood. That was probably what helped me the most. Just these women that I knew had my back, and they had all given birth. And again, some of them were like, I would give birth 12 more times, but I don't want 12 children. That they were in love with the process. Instead of what culturally in American society, birth hurts, it's scary, it's messy, it's yucky, and it's disgusting. This idea that it was one of the most beautiful things that you'll ever have happen to you in your life. And that helped me the most. Just to visualize how amazing it was going to be, and have someone tell you, this is absolutely, it's going to change your life. And they were right.
Yeah.
So.
And I'd say for me, it was just engaging in the process instead of, you think of like these stories back in the day when the woman would go in to give birth, and the man would stay on the waiting room and smoke until the baby showed up, and he wasn't involved in the process at all. So I think just being engaged in the process and educating myself and doing the classes together and really understanding, everything that was happening, you know, I mean, because it's my child as well. Like I'm part of the process bringing this person into the world. So,
but if you listen to us talk now, it's as much Paul's birth story as it is mine, and I think that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, because you were so involved in the process.
Yep.
This really was your story too.
Yeah. And it's part of that. I think part of the just instinct of protecting your family and keeping, you know, just a protective instinct over you. I want to make sure that you're going to be safe, and I think understanding the process really helped me feel confident that, yeah, we are doing the right thing, and this actually is going to be a better, you know, better outcome.
And can you imagine not having those moments? Could you imagine it being outside the room and not having those moments?
Yeah, because I mean, you can't. Yeah, it's once in a lifetime experience, I think, you know. So, and then going into it, you know, I would say with Ruby's birth, yes, you've never experienced it before, so there is a little bit of apprehension, like, okay, this is going to be intense. Like, am I going to be able to handle this? Like, am I going to be able to see what's happening and be okay with it? You know, and I think there's just normal apprehension with that, especially seeing your partner being in discomfort. And I remember saying it felt like there was nothing I could do because I wasn't the one giving birth. Like, there were so many times where I wanted to just like, okay, tag, I'll be the one, I'll do the next contraction, you go rest for a little bit, you know, and it's like, and it's really, you know, Betsy said, just all you have to do is just be there, and just you being there is helpful, or it's enough, you know. So, yeah, I think, yeah, from my perspective, it's really just being engaged and learning about the process and being a part of the process, and not just saying, hey, good luck, honey. Or
watching from the sidelines. Right. You're actually on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Because, yeah, there is. I think that was the biggest thing I learned, is there is a lot you can do. I mean, even like, I know with Ruby's birth, like I was giving you pressure, you know, applying pressure at certain parts in her back, and just kind of supporting you. And
we had essential oils, and we had, just talking to me.
I gave you a massage at one point, rubbed your feet, you know. So there's lots of ways to be involved.
And we learned, you know, like you learned, I mean, just because you're such a great dad, you know, when the baby was born, he wanted to make sure his shirt was off, and then the baby was on skin to skin. Like those are all things that he wanted. Like we have a picture of after Clyde was born, we put him in the moby wrap right away because we didn't do that with Ruby. Okay. And she didn't then end up not wanting to be wrapped up like that, which was, it's just the moby was so wonderful. And so Paul's like, I'm going to put him in the moby right now. So he's walking around, his shirt off with the moby wrap on. So.
I want to ask you, just because you're saying there are ways to be involved, what's your favorite thing, or what do you want like dads to know, like this is how, or this is what I enjoyed most?
I would say just, there were several parts of it that I enjoyed. I think the Bradley classes were really, really a good thing, especially because it's an actual like physical process that you're actually preparing for something, like you're training for something. So it's like anything you train for, like a sport or a job that you're going to do. I think going to the Bradley classes, you're educated, but then you're also going through like here's the process, the birth process, and the whole idea there is that you're a team, you're a birth team, and here's how you're going to help your spouse. And it was really kind of figuring out what was going to help you, and I think doing that ahead of time was really I feel like that helped a lot, and it helped me feel like I knew what to do then. Yeah,
well, and he would be like, I think you're in transition now. I think we're in transition.
Yep.
You know, like, I mean, he knew all the parts, and he knew you didn't just stand there either. Like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, you felt like you were really empowered that way by having the knowledge, and then it is a pretty straightforward. As long as it's uncomplicated, it's a pretty straightforward. This is what the baby does. This is what the contractions do. This is what the head does. Then it crowns. You know, I mean, so it wasn't as much of a mystery to you. You know, not being a female and being like, this is my body, and my body's been like this for 9 months. And you know, I think for the woman being in it, not having anything happening to your body, it's kind of like, okay, so what part am I going to play? But you learned a lot through the Bradley classes. We did a lot of, it was a lot for our marriage too. I mean, learning, right? How to trust each other and communicate with each other. And
Yeah.
That was fun. It was a fun
Yeah.
learning.
I would say that was, I would say probably the Bradley classes, and then just going with to each appointment. I went with to every appointment before, and so knowing kind of what that process is going to be.
What surprised you the most?
I would say like, I know like the second birth, like how easy it was, like how quick it went.
Okay.
I mean, I remember Clyde was born, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're done already? Like, I was ready for another, the first birth felt like a lot longer, it felt like a marathon. Whereas the second one, it was just like so quick and so easy. I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, I didn't actually birth the baby, but it was really, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was really surprising for me.
I don't know. I think there wasn't really a lot about the birth that surprised me. It was more after, to be honest. I was more surprised at how exhausted. Like, actually, not exhausted right away because you have all of the oxytocin and all the things that take over. But then that this baby is up all the time and that whole thing and that part after was just the most surprising. That how do you... I don't know how to explain that. Just that, what a shift that was from especially not having a child to going to having a child, and how, your body, you go through birth, and then afterwards, that's when the work begins actually, because, you're nursing this baby, you're taking care of this baby, and doing all those things, and how, I don't know.
And that was one thing I think we talked about was we took all the class, 18 hours of classes preparing for the birth. But 0 hours of classes like preparing for taking care of a newborn baby. There's, there's books and things like that. But yeah, there wasn't as much focus on, like now what do we do? Like,
I actually feel like had I do it again, I would hire the postpartum doula. Like we had the funds. And I know in some European countries they actually provide the postpartum doula. So what surprised me was just that in our country, what little support we provide, honestly, to families during that, almost what they call the fourth trimester.
Yeah, that's true.
So that surprised me, just how tired I was. And he had to go to work a week later, and I was still healing. And surprising almost in a sad way, just like why this is such a beautiful process and we need to be supportive of mothers and babies. And I just wish we did that more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And overall, like comparing it to a hospital birth, I would say, probably the surprising thing would just be how kind of spot on the process was. Like there weren't any red
flags
surprises.
It was just like this process that they had done a million times and they knew what to do. And because didn't at home, when we had the home birth, we went into the room. This is all I remember. We went into the room, we had Clyde. I must have sort of dozed off or fallen asleep. They cleaned up everything. They cleaned up the birth tub, all the towels, everything they left, and it was just like,
what?
It was like magic. Didn't it feel like magic?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden it was like, oh, here we are with the baby, and it's over. It's like after your wedding when everything's cleaned up and you're like, did we just plan that for a year and now it's over?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, wow. All right, well here we go. On to the next thing.
Yeah. I think really it's just how. If I were to go back and look at my mindset before we started the process and say, okay, what do I understand about birth? Nothing, basically. And having then gone through it in a birth center and then at home, I would say the surprising thing is really how easy it is and how simple it is. I mean, there's a lot of work that went into it, but if I think of it as a whole, it's kind of like, oh, this really isn't like as hard and difficult and scary as I perceived it to be before I knew anything about it, and before I experienced it. I think experiencing it too, you're like, oh yeah, your body does just kind of know what to do, and it just does it. Well,
and now when you talk about it, you're very emotionally invested in that. I mean, that it's such a positive.
Yeah. I definitely. I mean, I would definitely say that's why when you contacted me, I'm like, yeah, I'll share my story because it's.
Well, we love talking about it.
Yeah.
But how often do we get to talk about it, really?
You don't
anymore.
Well, because it's like you talked about. I mean, so many people don't know anything about it, and so you mention not having a baby at a hospital, and they're like, what? Like, why would you do that?
and I have had subsequently family members, cousins and things that have called.
Okay.
And they have then have babies out of hospital. So it's kind of cool when you do it than someone else. Or
paving the way.
Paving the way. And then I did cloth diapering. So, then they call and they're like, how did you do that? Or, you know.
Yep.
So you help. It's just women. It's women, that tribal idea of like passing along the torch. And
yeah. And I think, there's so few things in life that are really primal. So many things are convenience and easy, and you kind of, we've been removed a little bit from like nature.
Oh, like even hunting
just
or
out
getting
surviving, like the kind of just those primal things. And this is, I feel like, one of those experiences that we chose to really engage in the experience versus letting somebody else manage it and not
that's true.
and not experiencing it. So I don't know. Yeah, I just think had we chosen to just go to the hospital and done whatever interventions they would have offered, it would have felt more like everyday life versus feeling like getting to experience like something
and I think
natural and very,
I think for me, I learned
to our existence.
I learned a lot about asking questions and being knowledgeable when I go in. And I learned that medical professionals are just human beings that have knowledge, and oftentimes even the knowledge they have, which could be a wealth of it, is limited to their experiences.
Okay.
And now I've been a reading specialist for 12 years, and I feel like I have a lot of knowledge in that field, and even I will still pick up the phone and call colleagues or see something I've never seen before. And so I feel like that's part of being a really responsible adult, is when you're going to go through something, if you can learn as much as you can. So that when I went, if I had to go to the hospital, I knew what questions to ask. I knew how to advocate for myself. And I think that's something that if you try an out-of-hospital birth, it will teach you a lot of that as well. So it's not just having the birth and having your child. You learn so much about yourself, too.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm going to go back a bit again to the birth. Right after birth, how did you feel? Like in that kind of oxytocin moment?
I think with Ruby's birth, it was, I don't know. Clyde's was euphoric because I actually took out my phone and I recorded verbally the birth out loud. So that I would remember every moment. I wish I had done that with Ruby's.
Okay.
But so that everything that was as fresh as it could be. I don't know, with Ruby's it was more, I think because there had been that little emergency. Because I had bled a little bit.
Oh, right after.
And then you could feel everybody in the room was like, uh-oh, they had to spring into action, and there was a couple different things they did. I don't know, I think that one was...
Yeah, I mean, when I watched you, you were concerned about the bleeding a little bit initially.
And I want to know what's going on. When I go to the dentist, I want the dentist to tell me what they're doing. Like, please don't look at my mouth and look horrified and then not. Just tell me, you know what I mean? Like, just tell me we're going to do this, then we're going to irrigate. I need to know. I want to know what those things are. It makes me a lot less anxious.
Okay.
So when that started to happen, I just started asking questions. And then I think that disconnected me a little bit from that moment after. That's why to have that happen again and then to have no complication with Clyde was lovely to be able to compare. So I would say with hers, I was a little frightened at first, but I also feel like first time mom, first time birth, I think that some of that's got to be pretty normal.
And it was 14 hours, so I mean, you were
I was really
spent.
tired. And, and the second one was just, it was just so smooth. That one felt very euphoric. I almost wished like that Ruby hadn't, I love my daughter, but we just would have had more incubation, like cocoon time before she came. Because when she came back, she said that we ruined her life by having Clyde. She was very verbal at 3. She was like, oh no. Because, he took her spot and was snuggling with me. And so we were trying to also help her, But I think that really interrupted my ability to really enjoy it more, So, but I don't know. It was still special though, right? I mean, it was like, I did it, we did it, it's amazing.
Yep. Well, I more remember like the maybe half an hour after, just like lounging in the bed.
Yeah, so after that was all over and things calmed down,
to eat
we were laughing and And then they were checking Ruby, which was really fun because they were just checking her right there at the foot of the bed. And then they'd tell me, like, I'm just checking her reflexes and we're going to see that she's okay. And then also because I'd had a little bit of tearing, so they had to do some sewing. And I think that was uncomfortable, you know. Yeah. So that makes it different from if you didn't have any of that. You know, they're like, we're going to have to use a little anesthetic, you know, local anesthetic. And I don't know. Just give birth and you're just like, you know what, I think I've had enough. But everybody was really lighthearted, and you know, I know our midwife was like, I'm an expert quilter, so it's gonna be fine. Yeah. But you know, you feel really relieved too. I think that when it's all over, you're like, wow, yeah.
And how do you feel about the difference between because you had a water birth with Clyde?
Oh, I would do a water birth 100% next time. I mean, had I done the first one again, that was, for me, that was been fantastic. And then because it was really warm in Minnesota during that time of the year, that water felt so nice. Okay. But I do feel like it relieved a lot of things versus giving birth just on land, as they would say, you know? Yeah. But I tried wasn't I in the tub for a while with Ruby, and didn't we go in and out?
Yeah, and I think they had a tub there.
It wasn't,
but it was a hard, you know, it was a regular ceramic tub.
Yeah. So. But that was interesting, the positioning of giving birth with Ruby, that nothing else felt comfortable except to be on those all fours. They're just like, whatever is most comfortable, you know? Yeah. So. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So what is your individual advice for other mothers, for other fathers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the dads, I would say definitely jump in with both feet, like get engaged in the process and educate yourself. And like I said, the classes, the Bradley classes, and whatever other birth prep classes, like, I would say more is better. I don't think I would have felt as confident with just a short, like, here's what's going to happen in class, you know, 2-hour class probably wouldn't do it. So I would, you know, definitely recommend you know, doing some classes and, like I said, just be as involved in the process as you can. You know, like for me, I got to, like with Ruby, I got to catch her as she came out. I got to cut her umbilical cord. Like I got to do as much. I think I cut Clyde's umbilical cord. You know, so it's like just being involved in the process was really big for me, and just helped me. I don't know, kind of starts you off on the right foot. I feel like as a parent. Okay. And yeah, and then just being kind of supportive. I mean, you're the one doing the hard work, so. Being supportive, you know, being as supportive as you can, you know, along the process. That would be my advice.
I would agree 100% with education, but I'm a teacher, so I'm biased. I think knowledge is power. Dispelling myths, really important, and taking a critical look at what's best for you. But I would also say trusting your instincts for a mother, because I think there's a certain amount of trust and a connection that you have to the people that are going to be around you, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do out of hospital. I wanted to know who my provider was. I wanted to know that person. I wanted to have a connection, because that was going to make me feel at ease. I even find that with other care that I have. I really like to my provider, and feel like that they actually have an investment in getting to know me, even the smallest bit, or they might ask me about Ruby or Clyde now. So I would trust your instincts as far as when you're working with someone and you don't feel comfortable, get out of that situation, because you are going to be the most vulnerable that you have probably ever been, with your spouse being there and then these strangers being there. And so for me personally, feeling connected and cared about and invested in was probably what allowed it to be so successful for me. So trusting your gut, trusting your instincts, and making those connections with your providers, if possible. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
We've heard your story now.
Yeah. Now we told Ruby's story and your story.
Do you guys know where you were born?
I was born in a birth center.
And where were you born, Clyde?
In a birth center?
No.
In someone's house.
You were born at home.
In our house. Are you checking it out?
Are you a product of a birth center? I don't know.